other side.
And how's the department dealing with those? Because inevitably there will have to be some salvage operations there.
Certainly. Thankfully, we do not have any heavy vehicles that are trapped there. We do have a tow truck that is on standby, particularly in the affected area, which is Buckley Pass, to try and retrieve those vehicles that are trapped there, and most of them have been pulled out. It is for that reason that we're calling on road users to rather avoid those mountain passes altogether. Delay your travel time until you are advised otherwise, because it's just a matter of time before the snow gets heavier and the road will be forced to close.
Unathi, have there been any injuries reported so far?
Thankfully, nothing serious. It's just some minor lacerations here and there, but none has required hospitalization as yet, at least not as a result of the heavy snow. The only major accident that we had is not related to snow at all. It's the one that we had over the weekend, where 5 members of the same family unfortunately lost their lives when the driver lost control and the vehicle overturned. And among the deceased, sadly, was a 7-year-old girl. And that accident happened on the R63 just outside Adelaide.
And as far as the weather conditions going into the rest of the week, what is the forecast and what are the preparations from the Eastern Cape Transport Department to deal with these conditions?
Lady Grey remains our major headache, Sakina, because looking at the weather forecast for tomorrow, the maximum is only going to get to 6. Those are conditions that are still prone to snowfalls. So we expect the Buckley Pass to remain closed at least for the next 12 to 24 hours. And we'll call on motorists to not even take chances in entering that mountain pass. They would rather use the N6 via Alwal North, which on its own has its own problems with some snowfalls there as well, but it's not as bad as it is the case in Buckley Pass. So we'll have our law enforcement on the ground and all the rapid response teams ready to respond should there be a need to do so.
Unathi Bingqose, thanks so much for your time and for that update. Eastern Cape Transport Department spokesperson on the latest conditions there. Apologies to our listener who gave us that update on the Penhoek Pass. I didn't get your name. I missed your name and I just feel so bad. I keep referring to the listener and totally missed your name. Perhaps you can send us a voice note or something just to give your name. Appreciate that update. And of course, anyone else who's also briefed us with some information. We truly do appreciate it.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM.
So we have about just over a minute, so let's squeeze in a few of your voice notes.
Afternoon, Sakina Moses and Deputy Sakina, listening to Electricity Minister. That's good enough. Why does Eskom not sell their electricity direct to the consumers in municipalities? Consumers are paying to municipalities and municipalities are not paying to Eskom. And Eskom has a debt from municipality. Why don't they just sell direct to the consumers in municipalities so that the municipality officials who are eating this money should find their own ways to have revenue because they are failing to pay back to Eskom? This is Moses Tepe.
Good afternoon, Sis Sakina and your team, Jambo Africa. Sis Sakina, you see those things happening here in city of Matlosana as a sad thing. Sad thing. I am very angry. Today is Monday. We woke up with seeing this thing, that document that I'm sending to you. We don't have municipal manager. We don't have a mayor. We don't have a CFO. We woke up today. The speaker of Matlosana have been looting money and her husband is a something normal, but there is no services. What's going on in Matlosana? I think we need to change this Maspala name. We must call it Hollywood Municipality because of everyone he do like he like. They eat money, something normal. There is no accountability. What's going on in Matlosana? Please, can you intervene, Sis Sakina? It's anonymous in Matlosana.
Well, Anonymous, Moses, and I think Figile earlier raising the same issue about what happens to the monies that we pay to municipalities when we have to pay for the same debts that we had already paid for again. And I think that's a valid question. Hopefully, at some point, we'll get to consider that and maybe get some answers. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. It's already 1 o'clock, so please be safe out there. Please be warm. Here's Tinel Motaung with your latest news. Thank you, Sakina. Top stories. Ratsoma appointed as Vice President of BRICS Bank and planemaker Boeing to admit criminal fraud. A very good afternoon to you. Economist and former National Treasury Deputy Director General Monale Ratsoma has been promoted to the role of Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the Shanghai-based New Development Bank, also known as BRICS Bank. Ratsoma has been with the bank since 2018 as its Director General for Africa Regional Center. He assumes his new responsibilities at the Chinese-based lender today, succeeding another South African, Leslie Masdorp, who has been serving in the same role from 2015. South Africa is one of the founding members of the bank, along with China, Russia, Brazil, and India. Tshepo Mongwai reports.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says Ratsoma's appointment follows a thorough nomination process by the National Treasury and rigorous interview process conducted by the National Development Bank. Ratsoma's previous positions include economist with ABSA and later Tebe Securities, as well as holding senior positions at the National Treasury as Deputy Director General for Economic Policy. Tshepo Mongwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa says the country is now dealing with a new crisis called load reduction, which he says is due to the underinvestment in the electricity infrastructure by municipalities. This as various municipalities implement outages to avoid overloading in high-density areas. Ramokgopa says this front has been exposed by the fact that Eskom's generation side has done exceptionally well in ensuring that the entity is able to meet demand. He was briefing the media on electricity distribution and generation performance in Pretoria.
But we have seen that there's little to no investment that has been made in the replenishing, maintenance, the upkeep and the protection and modernization of this infrastructure. And as a result of that, municipalities are under severe strain. And as a result of this severe strain, they then initiate what they call load reduction. So that has nothing to do with the performance of Eskom. It has everything to do with, if you like, downstream inaction on the part of municipalities. That's the crisis that is confronting us.
In other news, the South African Law Reform Commission is calling on interested parties to submit written submissions on its discussion paper, which seeks to review apartheid era and colonial legislation. The inquiry will assess whether the legislation is compatible with expressive rights contained in the Constitution. It will further advise on whether legislation found wanting in this regard should be retained as is, retained with amendments, or revoked. Kenny Mapanga reports.
Although South Africa became a constitutional democracy on 27 April 1994, old order legislation in force was retained to ensure, amongst others, an orderly transition. However, the continued existence of these laws have garnered much criticism, prompting Parliament to initiate a government-wide review of all pre-democratic era legislation to ensure they are compatible with the spirit and letter of the Constitution. Comments on this review must be submitted by 30 September 2024. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Moving to KwaZulu-Natal, the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has placed disaster management teams on high alert in western parts of the province. This follows a severe wind warning by the South African Weather Service. Residents are advised to secure any loose items around their homes and properties and stay indoors. Disaster management teams are also actively responding to felt fires across the province. In Mpumalanga, the Lawfeld and Escarpment Fire Protection Association, LEFPA, has urged citizens to refrain from making open fires as the fire season is underway. The organization says currently there are 9 veld fires active in the Lawfeld part of the province. LEFPA's General Manager Andres Kieper says at this stage they have managed to contain 2 of the 9 fires.
Within the Lawfeld and Escarpment Fire Protection Association operational area, we've got about estimated 9 fires burning in various places as far as Bushbuck Ridge, Badplaas, White River area, as well as Machadodorp area. Currently, we've got air support, private, as well as working on fire joint ventures assisting with these fires, as well as private ground crews, commercial ground crews assisting landowners, communities within the area.
Lastly, Boeing has agreed to plead guilty to a criminal fraud conspiracy charge to resolve the U.S. Justice Department investigation linked to 2 fatal crashes involving the 737 MAX aircraft. The plea deal, which requires a judge's approval, would brand the plane maker a convicted felon in connection with crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia over a 5-month period in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. The BBC's Theo Leggett has the details.
The criminal charge against Boeing has come as a result of an incident earlier this year in which an unused door panel fell off a brand new 737 MAX shortly after takeoff. That, together with mounting evidence of poor quality controls at Boeing's factories, was enough to persuade the US Department of Justice to reopen its criminal case against the company. The aerospace giant will now have to pay an extra fine of $244 million, while an independent monitor will be appointed to ensure it cleans up its act. Families of those who died in the 2 earlier accidents involving the 737 MAX have criticised the plea agreement.
Recapping the top story this hour, economist and former National Treasury Deputy Director General Monale Ratsoma has been promoted to the role of Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the Shanghai-based New Development Bank, also known as BRICS Bank. Headlines at 1:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dino Motaung.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
It definitely was the most anticipated debut album at the time, being released back in 2011. This was Loliwe was the title of the album, and from that it birthed the two leading singles, Loliwe and of course Ndiza. At the time of its release, it sold 20,000 copies within just a matter of 72 hours, but then went on to break records and selling in excess of just under 400,000 copies just a few weeks after that. I'm not too sure where it ultimately landed in terms of those physical album sales. You know, we were still buying albums then, music stores were still open. So I'm not too sure where it landed as its final figure within that first month. But no doubt, if it sold 20,000 copies in the first 72 hours and then quickly accelerating that to just in excess of 400,000 within a matter of weeks, then it must have definitely charted and landed somewhere quite impressive after that marketing run was done. Of course, on production of this was Robbie Malinga, who contributed quite immensely to the production and co-writing of a lot of Zahara's material. He too, a talent so sorely now missed. That is Zahara coming through with Ndiza, and that is how we kick off the show on this bitterly cold Monday afternoon. It is cold nationwide. Of course, if you were listening to my colleague there, you do know that it is cold everywhere. Sakina was giving an update in the final moments of the show. There's snowfall in the Eastern Cape, and it's having a sort of a ripple effect countrywide. They do say, though, those who were out for the big weekend, that Durban did deliver with the sunshine and summer weather, but Durban tends to have its own little attitude going on in winter. When the rest of the country is in the grips of cold, Durban will serve you a beautiful summer's day. We've got lots of show coming up today. We're talking around the dangers of social media use in the workplace. And I wonder, by the way, as we gear up for this conversation, are you familiar with your workplace and your employer's social media policy? When you went through your work induction, your interview, or your orientation for your work, or even those annual programs and workshops that are often run by HR, like if you've been in an organization for long, HR, it's their responsibility to keep running those little clue you in workshops, you know, when policies change, when things happen and they conscientize you. Have they been conscientizing you and orientating you around social media and what the company policy talks to when it comes to the social media policy and whether or not the company has a social media policy to begin with? Because you'd be surprised. You know, we talked to Lerato Ntwampe quite a bit, who's a social media legal expert, and she often says you'd be surprised how many organizations actually don't have social media policies in place. Or if they do, it's a very generic one that is open to all kinds of innuendo and interpretation. So I wonder, in your workplace, do you have a social media policy? Let us know on 061-410-4107. And what do you understand of your workplace social media policy, and as far as how you conduct yourself on platforms like Facebook and Twitter, X as it's now called, and whatever other social platforms you use to engage. That is the conversation we're going to be having, the dangers of social media use in the workplace. And then on the other side of one, we are going to be catching up with the folks from RCL Foods. They are launching the Young Chefs and Bakers Challenge 2024. They had it last year, and they'll tell us about the success of last year's one and what's in store this year. After 2, we look at how modern work fuels loneliness. Well, then this should be interesting. Is it a case of modern work fueling loneliness, or are we just in a cycle of where we are just all too consumed by capitalism, and ultimately that's all that drives, that's all that drives our priorities? I don't know. We'll have that conversation on the other side of 2 o'clock. And then we are also going to be touching base with some folks who are in the retail industry. 95% of retail leaders in SA fear e-commerce boom. Now, how does one adapt? Because we are clearly living in the age of digital penetration, and a lot more people are moving into the e-commerce way of conducting business. I wonder. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on.
In South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. Sign a petition to demand strong warning labels on unhealthy packaged food. And don't forget to catch the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org on Thursday, 27 June from 3 p.m. Young people tell us how big food companies are feeding them lies.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
All right. It is the inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference that will be taking place from the 10th until the 12th of July 2024. And we're going to be in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. And you can tune in to myself on The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Let's have a conversation now around the dangers of social media use in the workplace. And we're wondering, how familiar are you with your workplace social media policy and guidelines? Have you been orientated? Have you even looked at what your contract says around this, your presence and your engagement in social media, how you represent yourself and how you represent your organization or the company that you work for? 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line, and 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. Of course, you don't have to tell us who you work for. You don't have to be that specific. You can just be very generic and maybe tell us what sector, what field you work in and whether or not you've been orientated around this. And we've got the Senior Associate at the Employment Law Practice at Cliff Decker Hofmeyer, Khodi Shaw Pasha, joining us now. We've seen all kinds of advancements, obviously, in technological gadgets. We all have smartphones, we all have laptops. We all very much are immersed in this digital world, primarily through social media. It's part of who we are. It's part of how we communicate and dialogue every single day. And I wonder if, you know, companies and organizations are doing enough by way of just firstly orientating their company members, their staffers and employees around their interactions and use of social media. How are you doing, Khoshidisha? You good?
I'm good, thank you, Bridget. Good afternoon to you and afternoon to all the listeners.
Thank you for taking the time. No, thank you for taking the time. It's only but a pleasure. Are organizations doing enough to orientate their staff and their employees around their conduct and their engagement on social media?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I definitely say that there's been a move in terms of what employers are currently seeing as the dangers of social media, and some employers are trying to incorporate some policies in terms of what is acceptable conduct to post and what is not acceptable. And obviously they're a bit hesitant as well, simply because it raises other issues of privacy and other issues of freedom of expression. Can I, as an employee, not express myself in the way that I want to on the various social media platforms? I mean, these days there are so many, So those are some of the factors that employers are grappling with, but the numbers are growing in terms of employers implementing these policies in their businesses.
I mean, it is a tightrope for anyone to walk, right? I mean, I know from sort of my professional space and sitting, there are things that we wish we could say outright. There are times when you have to draft that tweet and then delete it because you are quite conscious of professionally. There is a perception about the role that you play in conversation in society, and personally, you might want to just go out there and exercise your freedom of speech, but you have to almost walk a tightrope, and I guess by extension, this should basically be how we all are around social media.
Yes, no, definitely, I definitely agree with you, and as you're mentioning that tension. It just shows that, you as an employee are in essence an agent of your employer, and again, that's also a different thing to understand, because am I always an agent 7 days a week? Do I get a rest from being an agent, and can I have my own views? But again, because of the fact that you are these days, it's very difficult to demarcate your personal life and your employment relationship. Then you end up having to tread the line between the two. So that has to be done very carefully.
And it's a very fine line. And when we talk about just the kind of engagement that we see on social media, a lot of the time. It's unvented information, or unvetted information rather. Unvetted information. It sort of leans more towards defamatory statements and reckless statements. And now I wonder, how do we then constitute defamation in these environments, and how do we regulate that?
Yeah. And it's a very important question you're asking there. So as a point of departure, so a statement, especially within the relationship of an employer and an employee, does not have to be a defamatory statement in order to get an employee into trouble, right? So I'll start with the employment relationship, and I'll also get to when it would tell defamation.
Okay.
So in the employment relationship, if there is a link between your statement and a harm that is caused, or that may be caused to your employer, then you may be charged, or you may be found wanting for bringing your employer's reputation into disrepute. And for that, you don't have to satisfy any requirements for defamation. It's just simply saying that, hey, what you said affected our business and our goodwill. Therefore, we're going to charge you based on that. Now, that's just the normal employer and employee relationship consequence. Now, when we go to the defamation side, that is more of a legal term, which, again, shouldn't be thrown around loosely, in the sense that, so defamation has specific elements which you need to satisfy. And those elements that, there must be a publication, whether it is a written or a verbal publication, and the defamer must intend to defame another person. And again, by person, I also include corporations as juristic persons. And there must be harm, some sort of harm or injury that is felt by the person who's being defamed. And then lastly, the publication must violate the person's rights to their good name, reputation, and dignity. So those are some of the elements you have to just kind of satisfy before you can come down with defamation. But again, what is important is that as an employer or in an employment relationship, you don't need to satisfy all of those, because if there can be a link that shows that your words or statements have affected the goodwill and reputation of your employer, then you may be disciplined for that.
Now, how do we then know, as you know, when we are sort of crossing that line? Does that then tie back to very clear company policies and the clear wording of what that code of conduct is in as far as it relates to our engagement and interaction on social media?
Yeah, so, and again, this is where these policies come into play and are very important. So in certain contexts, your employer would have certain rules of engagement for you. Say, look, due to your position as this and that, we would advise you not to post anything on your social media platforms regarding these certain things. Because, I mean, Bridget, you can imagine if I work for a big company on the stock exchange and, you know, I post things regarding, or rather I post things that may speak to the vote, to certain things in the market that may just mess things up in terms of my job. You know, there you can actually establish a clear link. So it's very important that these policies state specifically what are some of the things that employees cannot post about. And obviously there's certain things you cannot define, but just content that would not harm the reputation of the employer.
I think I want to go one step backwards and go in a little bit harder even on this defamation, right? As it sort of plays with our right to freedom of expression or freedom of speech, because oftentimes that's the tone on platforms like X. That I tweet in my own capacity, I X in my own capacity, and therefore I can say whatever I want. And, you know, you be damned if you feel some type of way, whether it's true or not true. And I think we're not sort of understanding this whole defamation and what constitutes it in real life and the consequences thereof. And even when one looks at, and I know Lerato Mtwambe, who's a similar expert to you, would often speak about, I forget the term, she calls it the chain of something. When you retweet, you are ultimately agreeing to the statement that has been made.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, the chain of publication, you're basically saying, oh, hey, look, here's something else that I would like to bring to your attention, essentially. You know, you're basically just forwarding that message. And again, that does constitute a publication. And again, I mean, in real life, you basically just have to ask yourself the question, does this have the potential to cause harm? Right? Because again, if we look at like some of the defenses for defamation, if this were to be before a judge, some of those defenses would be that the statement or the publication is truth, or that it's fair comment, or that you are saying that in the public interest. Basically, you're basically publishing this because there's a huge aspect, or there's a huge interest, or the public has a big interest in the matter. So, I mean, if it's not true and the intention is to harm another person's reputation, dignity, that's where that's going to come into play. So it can't be done without intention.
Can we pause there for a second? My eye did not cast itself to the time, and it's just gone 1:30. It's time for us to catch up with the headline news.
Thanks, Bridget. Good afternoon. With the headlines, I'm Dineo Mutaung. Free State Health MEC Munyatso Mahlati says the National District Hospital in Bloemfontein will remain closed for the duration of the investigation into the fire that burned down the first and second floor yesterday afternoon. In other news, economist and former National Treasury Deputy Director General Monale Ratzoma has been promoted to the role of Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the Shanghai-based New Development Bank.
also known as BRICS Bank. And Action SA says it will nominate Athol Trollip as chairperson for Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We're having a conversation around our social media conduct as it relates to us and our employers, how we should be conducting ourselves as employees, the things that we should be considering when it comes to the kinds of information and conversations that we are having. And of course, I wonder, Wuti, have you been orientated around your company's social media policies? Are you well versed as to what goes and what doesn't go in the organization that you work in? Have you all ever had this workshop with your HR, or it's something that it's kind of been left to your own, your own senses to figure out for yourself? 0614104107. That is our WhatsApp line that you can send through your WhatsApp voice notes, or 086-000-2032 is the number you can call us on. Can I ask you a question that might seem silly, but I don't know, it just popped up in my mind. So here we are, we are in the office environment, and we oftentimes sort of moving between different devices, laptops and phones. You've got your social media deck on, and you've got your phone in the one hand. I wonder if if a link can be made, for instance, that you have been conducting or spreading misinformation, disinformation, and using a company resource like a company laptop. Is there a legal ramification there, or is there some kind of consequence also that an employer can then enforce?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually. So there would ultimately be no difference whether you used a phone handed to you by your employer, or a device handed to you by an employer, or your own personal device. The issue will be with regards to what publication was made. Mm-hmm. So, it doesn't really matter whether you are on duty or off duty. Mm. And most policies will say that, but this policy transcends just being at work. So it obviously, if you have an employee and a device, rather a device handed to you by your employer, they are entitled in most cases to get the device back and go through it. Mm. Most policies state that. So I guess it would, in that context, it would be a little bit easier for that information to be accessed, to see exactly to what extent you made those publications the job. Mm. But the full story is essentially that you don't need to be a work computer, work software.
And when we're being overly zealous there on X, and we're complaining about everything that's going wrong in our Mondaying, and then you happen to be critical of your employer and speak unkind of your employer or your colleagues or your line manager, because we see a lot of this conversation happening. Should there be things there as well? As I say this, I realize that common sense is really not often that common, because why would you even be having that kind of engagement about your employer? But are there things that people should be worried about there and should be considering? How you choose to vent about your employer and your place of work?
Yes, and again, I can't emphasize this more than this, but it is very important. Really, just encourage people not to do that, not to vent and mention names on social media platforms, because that again may bring up a claim from your employer saying, actually, you're actually tarnishing my good name and reputation, and are these things actually true though? Mm. So there's just harm in you if it deciding to do that on social media platforms, because obviously the employer will come and say there are many streams in which your grievances could be addressed. Why did you not choose to do that? But again, you intended to harm persons. And again, there are some defenses, as I said. If it's something that's in the public interest, you could raise it as a defense. If it's something that is truth, you can say that, and that will constitute a valid defense. But again, in the employment relationship, and again, I want to say this because when it comes to the employment relationship, you're not in a court of law. So the standard, in order for you to be disciplined, is not high at all. The standard is simply whether you've brought your employer into disrepute and whether your relationship has been damaged. And that's exactly that. So if it is found that the relationship between you and your employer is irreparable, then there are grounds for dismissal in that context. So you see how it takes it low in the sense of like, it would be different for us a defamation claim in a court of law. However, in the employment relationship, it's simply, is this relationship repairable or not? Right? And whether there was any disrepute or like bringing your employer's name into disrepute. And that's that. And I think, in my view, that bar is very low. So, which means that employees need to be very careful to what they post on social media platforms. And this goes for their views as well. Again, I'm not saying that you cannot say your views on social media, but certain persons that acquire certain positions need to be careful because their views may be seen as their views of the employer. Right? So that's also something very, very important to take into consideration.
And also, one for me though, Kgodishon, we've seen these sort of examples play out in X, right, where even at the lowest level of employment, your views also speak to some degree to codes of conduct of companies in as far as how you represent, as you keep saying, how you represent the organization. And so you expressing a particular thing in a particular way, as much as individually you are perhaps constitutionally allowed to, it brings the question of, does the company want to be associated with the views that you share?
Yes. No, exactly. And that's exactly what I say. We're no longer living in an age where we can't tell who works where. There's newspapers, newspaper publications. I mean, now it's just as easy as we know. I mean, certain people even put where they work in their social media profile. So it's very easy to link certain views with a certain employer, and that's essentially the same as committing some form of misconduct whilst wearing your employer's uniform. Even if it's off-duty, right? As long as there can be a link that brings it back to that certain employer, then there are going to be issues there.
And we live in an era where people are very quick to find that information, and then we see those posts where they tag and they say, hey, at SAFM, is this what you want to be associated with?
Yes,
and
exactly.
It comes with all kinds of drama.
Yeah, and I mean, something that's very important for people to think about, and I also have to remind myself of this, is that your social footprint or your social media footprint, your internet footprint is there forever. So in the next 10 years, when you're in a different role, doing something else or working for a different employer, there may well be a post posted 5 years ago that comes up to the front. And again, it creates a reputational risk for your new employer. What happened then? Now, this again just shows we have to be very, very, very careful with what on social media, because again, we don't know what jobs we're going to have later on.
Absolutely. And in our final point, what you've just said also brings me to we're now also seeing a trend of employers who are doing these kinds of social media scrubs in as far as going to look and see on your handles and search your name on digital platforms to see what kind of character you have in those spaces. And so you could be unwittingly now not getting, that position that you've applied for at a different organization because they've unearthed the blueprint of who you are on social media.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, it's a very difficult concept because ordinarily, you know, they would have to ask you to disclose if there are anything unsavory that you've said or published in the past, and obviously because you're the job, probably say no. And then if they find that, then you're being untruthful. You see what I'm saying? So they wouldn't just ordinarily say, well, we're just going to dig up stuff past them.
Yeah.
Those things to find. That would, in some context, as an unfair dismissal. However, if they ask you to disclose whether you've published certain unsavory things and you do not, then that's where the trouble comes in.
I think definitely a lot for folks to keep in the back of their minds as we continue engaging with this world of social media. We appreciate the time today and, of course, the advice. I think it was advice more than anything else. Kgodisho Pasha joining us, the Senior Associate at the Employment Law Practice, Cliff Decker and Hofmeyer. It's just gone 2 o'clock. Let's take a quick pause and then we come back and we catch up with the folks from RCL Foods.
Nelson Mandela once said,
It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it.
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
It is time now to catch up with Chef Bradley Kavanagh, who is the head chef of RCL Foods. My apologies there, Bradley, if the tongue went a bit with your tongue. How are you doing today? I mean, with your surname.
It's Kavanagh, but you did it very
Kavanagh.
well.
There we go. I was trying to decipher in my head, is it Eastern? Is it European? Kavanagh, thank you so much for the time. And of course, we're here to talk the RCL Foods, which is launching the Young Chefs and Bakers Challenge for 2024. But you had this challenge last year, right? And from what I know, it was quite the resounding success.
Yes, thanks very much for having me on the show. The competition is actually now entering its fourth year. We did the competition in 2021. We started right in the midst of exiting COVID. And it really is to discover and celebrate South Africa's brightest young culinary talents. It's there to foster the innovation, the creativity, the excellence amongst aspiring chefs and bakers between the ages of 18 and 27. And it really embodies the RCL Foods commitment to cultivating skills and nurturing sort of culinary passion that's evident in this country. And we're very, very fortunate to be able to host this competition and bring that to life and facilitate this competition.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think that we've got a wealth of talent in the culinary arts, as I like to call it. And how do we fare, from sort of internationally when we gauge and place ourselves around our counterparts? Because I tend to think we are right up there with the very best of the best.
Well, if we go back, the South African chefs have got a history of competing on the international stage, and if you look at the past few years, we've competed very well. Now with the social media, with recipes that are shared, and inspiration that is global at the touch of your finger points, at the touch of your fingers, you really get to see what's happening on an international stage, as well as the travel overseas and coming back and representing your country. You get so much more exposure and inspiration than 10, 15 years ago. So it's definitely evidence that we've got a wealth of culinary experts, of competition chefs, and we then try and start that at a very young age so that they can grow and start representing on a junior level internationally, as well as later on onto the senior level.
Yeah. And I mean, if the competition is focused on innovation and excellence in that demographic of 18 to 27 years of age, I'm presuming you're catching them just as they're entering culinary school first year?
So that is the goal. It is a, if you can call it a inter-schools competition, a culinary, it's for youngsters or young chefs that are learning the trade. And we've made it where they pair up with another or a partner that's studying the same course, and it's a team of two that they represent the school. So, you know, they partner up, they choose their partner as long as it's from the same campus and the same school. And then they've got to submit original recipes. They've got to submit a restaurant main course and an innovation dessert. And, you know, these are judged based on a rubric that we've got. It's the ingredients that they've used, the creativity, the presentation, you know, the adherence to the competition guidelines that we set out. And we opened the competition middle of June, and they've got until the 2nd of August to get those entries in.
Sure. Okay. So you say, from what I'm understanding, so 3 category submissions for them as chefs: the original recipe, the restaurant main course, and then the dessert. Is it easy to come up with an original recipe?
I think it is. I mean, we've untapped so much, and there's so much more that can be done with our food. You know, there's obviously criteria that they've got to meet, but we've made it really a main course, which every night, if you're cooking at home, that's what you're presenting every night, and then an innovation sort of dessert as well, where they have to use sort of our staple of ingredients that we manufacture from the RCL Foods staple of ingredients, and then it's to submit that with photographs, and then they're halfway there. The hardest part is just applying your mind to what you can do, and then it's just putting that on paper, making it, taking the photo, submitting it, and I think that's half the job done.
All right. Now, let's talk about this, innovation or innovative dessert or dessert innovation, because there's something quite interesting linked to this, right? You're offering them an exclusive opportunity, the set or the duo that wins in this particular category.
Yes, so this year, every year we look at how we can change it up a little bit, and it's all about, honing their crafts and skills development and that. And this year we've sort of we're working with Gary Caballot Chocolate, which is a Belgian chocolate brand for professional chefs in the industry, and they're going to be using the chocolate along with our products in the semi-finals as well as the finals. And the team that wins the dessert course in the finals is going to have a special prize, which is to attend the Chocolate Academy, sponsored by Caballot Chocolate, and it's their 2.0 chocolate course over 2 days that are winners of and the winners of the dessert course are not necessarily the winners of the competition overall. It's the best dessert that is going to win the prize, sponsored by Caballot Chocolate.
Oh, sounds fantastic. And also sounds like a career-making opportunity, especially if you're trying to focus more on the desserts part of the menu.
So, it's called the Young Chefs and Bakers. So there's sort of skills across the entire kitchen, and we've worked hard to get the balance right between a chef and a baker. And this competition really there's a bit of baking, there's a bit of hot kitchen work, there's a bit of pastry work or patisserie work, and this year, the chocolate is going to feature quite heavily in the desserts, along with our brands as well, our Meadowland and Marvello's, that are RCL products. But yes, certainly the winner of the dessert is going to have a great opportunity, and you never know what the future holds. If you are seen by South Africa's top judges as well, and you never know what doors that's going to open.
Absolutely. As we run out of time, now final moments for any chefs that are listening out there, young chefs ages 18 to 27. What are the pertinent details? Which portal can we go to get all of that entry information?
Right. So if you go into www.RCL Foods, your food partners, that'll take you onto our main page. You scroll down, you'll see the Young Chefs and Bakers emblem or the logo. They click onto that, the terms and conditions, the entry forms, the recipe templates, everything is there. And my piece of advice is don't be nervous to enter. This is an opportunity that awaits a team or a couple of teams that could springboard their career, be noticed by the best chefs in the country who are judging their food, and take the opportunity. It's there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chef. That was a head chef of RCL Foods, Chef Bradley Kavanagh. Of course, that competition is open to you if you are 18 to 27 years of age and you happen to be a chef or a baker. It is time now to get into Kids Corner. That will run us till the top of the hour with your 2 o'clock news coming up.
The National Pulse.
Do you see 9 days without water as a crisis, or is it just a nuisance?
It's definitely a crisis. I mean, you can't take a shower, personal hygiene is at risk, you've got elderly people. Thankfully, the residents have sort of clubbed together and we had generous donations of some people sharing water trucks and boreholes. Otherwise, people just wouldn't survive. I mean, think about 9 days without a drop of water. It's absolutely catastrophic.
Now, I do understand it is widespread. Do you know how widespread it is?
Yes, so we've actually got letters of support for this protest from Craig Park area. We've got people from Melville. We've got people from certain area parts of Greenside. Some people have been intermittent, but there's a lot of people in these areas who also had no water for 9 days.
Doreen Tell, a resident of Amarensha in Johannesburg.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Good day to you all. My name is Lorraine Moyo. I am 12 years old. The 2 most important rules everyone must follow is that they should not interrupt when someone is speaking and no climbing or jumping on furniture. The rules that I must follow during the school holidays is that I should study, whether it's 1 hour, that's enough, and then I can play with my phone. And then so that I don't forget my work. These rules were decided by my parents. One rule I would change is no phone during the school days, because I can still do my homework and chores and finish up, and then after that I can be able to play with my phone. Yes, I do find the rules at home very helpful because it puts order at home and it makes people listen to their parents, the children. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.
Hello, my name is Monet Angel Ngobera. The 2 most important rules that everyone has to follow in our home are always being clean and respectful to each other. Yes, I do have a special rule that I have to follow during these holidays, which is being careful and always coming back home early. No, I wasn't part of making those rules. However, the rules were both decided by my parents and the elders. I don't think that there are any rules that I would like to change that are placed in my home. Yes, I do find the rules placed in my home helpful because some of them have protected me in most cases, and some have taught me to be a respectful and diligent person around the people I live with. Thank you and have a lovely day.
My name is Lubandi Klingwane. I think the 2 most important rules in my home is that you should always make sure to respect everybody, whether that be your age mate, someone older, it doesn't matter. Respect is something that is key. And then another thing is to always make sure that the house is clean and tidy. It isn't really a special rule, but I do also still have to make sure that the house is tidy. For the fact that me and my younger sister are at home now because of holidays, the house does tend to be very, very messy. So we just have to always make sure that it is clean and it is tidy. If there was only one rule that I could change in my home, was that I can stay in my room for a couple of hours. My parents don't really allow me to do that because, I don't know, they just feel like it's better for us to be together as a family and have conversations. But sometimes I do want my own alone time and my own privacy, and I just want to be alone. That is honestly it. That is all I'm asking for. These rules, I was not a part of them when they were being made. I was basically born into them because these have been rules for literally my entire life. So, yeah. I believe that these rules that my parents have put in place are definitely helpful because the teachings, the lessons, these rules that my parents have put in place have shaped who I am, and I am who I am because of these rules. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Amashe Kakela. Yes, there are one of the rules we have at home is no gadgets at the table when we eat. This helps us to engage with everyone. This other important one is speak only when spoken to. I see other kids jumping into adult conversation and that is not cool. House rules are good because they prepare us to become better adults.
My name is Bona Ramad. The rules in my family is a factor. For example, I am not allowed to make noise in the house or play in the house. The other rule is I'm not allowed to make the house look dirty, and when I'm done eating, I must put the plate on the sink. If the rules wasn't there, I would be a bad child. I would make the house look dirty, like when I'm done eating, I just throw the plate on the floor. And it was going to smell so bad, and the house would look horrible. If I would add a rule, I would say don't play in cars, because when a driver comes in the car would be scratched, and he'll be confused why the car won't start. This rule is for my baby brother and baby sister because they always play in a car and they change gears.
Hello friends and happy Monday. Today let's dive into the topic of rules and why they are so important in all aspects of our lives. Rules play a crucial role in helping us coexist peacefully and safely. Just imagine the chaos if everyone simply did as they pleased without considering others. It would be hectic. Rules act as a set of guidelines that define acceptable behaviors and what is not. Take traffic rules for example. They ensure safety of drivers and pedestrians by providing clear instructions on when and where to go. Without these rules, driving would be risky and accidents would be more frequent. Adhering to rules also fosters trust and respect within our communities. By following the same set of rules, we demonstrate our respect for one another and show that we care about everyone else's well-being. This is particularly important in schools, where rules create an environment conducive to learning and safety. When we abide by school rules, we contribute to making school a better place for all. You also need to understand that following rules instills discipline and responsibility in us. It teaches us to regulate our actions and make wise decisions. This valuable life lesson is crucial for achieving our goals and becoming successful adults. For instance, by following the rules of a game, we not only play fairly, but also learn teamwork and how to handle victory and defeat gracefully. Additionally, following rules can make life more enjoyable and less stressful. When everyone follows the same rules that are put in place, it promotes harmony and reduces conflicts. Picture going to a store with your family, where everyone queues up and waits their turn to pay. No pushing or shoving involved. This creates a fair and pleasant shopping experience for everyone. So always remember that rules are there to guide us, ensure safety, and make our communities happier places to be. Some of you are going back to school tomorrow. It's important to keep in mind all the school rules and make sure to follow them carefully.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Top stories: fire halts services at National District Hospital in Bloemfontein, and Ratsoma appointed as Vice President of BRICS Bank. With the news, I am Dino Motaung. Good afternoon. Free State Health MEC Monyatso Mahlatsi says the National District Hospital in Bloemfontein will remain closed for the duration of the investigation into the fire that burned down the first and second floor yesterday afternoon. The blaze started outside the pediatric ward. 83 patients were evacuated and transported to the Botshabelo Hospital around Bloemfontein. MEC Mahlatsi says labor officials are expected to do inspections before the hospital can be opened to the public again.
The people who are coming, we want to take this opportunity to make a call that our people who need emergency services, they should rather go to Pelonomi and Universitas Hospital until further notice. We allow the forensics to do their work, and after that, I've just communicated with the Department of Labor that they should come and check the place, and they'll tell us when the place is safe to be occupied. It's only then that we can come back and use the parts that have not been affected by the fire.
Action SA says it will nominate Athol Trollip as chairperson of Parliament's Standing Committee for Public Accounts. The party has set its sights on Scopa Chair in the National Assembly and 3 other provinces. John Moody will be nominated in Gauteng, Thoko Mashiane in Mpumalanga, and Kgosi Kwena Mangope in the Northwest. The chairperson of Scopa is generally reserved for the opposition parties. In the National Assembly, the position has previously been filled by the IFP and the African People's Convention. Parliament will elect chairpersons of portfolio committees on Tuesday. In other news, economist and former National Treasury Deputy Director General Monale Ratsoma has been promoted to the role of Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at the Shanghai-based New Development Bank, also known as BRICS Bank. Ratsoma has been with the bank since 2018 as its Director General for Africa Regional Center. He assumes his new responsibilities at the Chinese-based lender today, succeeding another South African, Leslie Marsdorp, who has been serving in the same role from 2015. South Africa is one of the founding members of the bank, along with China, Russia, Brazil and India. Tepo Mwai reports.
Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana says Ratsoma's appointment follows a thorough nomination process by the National Treasury and rigorous interview process conducted by the National Development Bank. Ratsoma's previous positions include economist with ABSA and later Tebe Securities, as well as holding senior positions at the National Treasury as Deputy Director General for Economic Policy. Tsepo Mungwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
67 urology patients at Freer Hospital in the Eastern Cape are expected to undergo urology-related surgeries this week as the department tries to reduce the backlog of more than 900 on the waiting list. With the help of non-profit organization African Synergy Health, the department will conduct surgeries including removal of gallstones. Health MEC Ntandokazi Kapa.
The contributing factors is the fact that one, this is a scarce skill. It means there's a shortage of specialists in this field. Secondly, is the vastness of the province, where you serve about 3 million people served by one hospital, a population of 3 million. So it means it is a problem. And again, I think in the country, there's about only 50 specialists in this field, only 50 in the country, not necessarily in the province. So if you have 50 in the country, just imagine how many you can have in the province of Eastern Cape.
Lastly, President of Egypt Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has congratulated President Cyril Ramaphosa on his new term of office. President Ramaphosa received a call from Fattah el-Sisi and shared his expectation that South Africa and Egypt will continue to cooperate on issues of common interest. Presidential spokesperson Vincent Magwenya.
President Ramaphosa expressed his appreciation for President el-Sisi's good wishes and agreed on the importance of continued partnership between our two countries on matters of bilateral, continental and multilateral interest. Of particular significance to the two leaders is the need to work together on the Palestinian issue and the crisis in the Gaza Strip.
Recapping the top story this hour, Free State Health MEC Monyatso Mahlatsi says the National District Hospital in Bloemfontein will remain closed for the duration of the investigation into the fire that burned down the first and second floor yesterday afternoon. Headlines at 2:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dinomo Taung.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
For this next track, you really need to bob your head, make noise, maybe sing along. Just want you to chill back and listen. When you don't look up and ask yourself, Khuti la khanang, Tule fatshe la boraro la bathong le naganang. A senyegile meletlo, kopana ka dipitlo ke malwetse ra bolana dilo tse di fatla ditlo. When you don't look up and ask yourself, kwetsagalang, umuzi wa ka baba ncele nitshele ninjani. A senyegile meletlo, kopana ka dipitlo sonke siyafa and we suffer dilo tse di fatla ditlo. We're all familiar with the ABCs. Private school kids know about the IEBs. We know the OTVs, the KTVs, the BBCs. Now we all familiar about the killer STDs. Let's oversee my tata anabana karapela. Use a condom reader if you don't say it. Or don't make love at all, do it how unye say. Hai sike fete, si lepo se panyaga le rato, habale kweche. They'd rather go sleep around, not try to get my lete. I ole bete. You forgotten gore ace kills. Nobody to save you. Disango more extra doctor pills. One day watch some to take 5 and think of this. How many ignorant people are infected cause of this? I know you've heard the song so many times in Yahoo Kenya, but unless you act bullets, you won't what you're saying. When I look up and ask yourself, Khuti la khanang, Tomu fatshe la boraro na bathong le naganang. A senyegile meletlo, kopana ka dipitlo ke malwetse ra bolana di fatla ditlo. When I don't look up and ask yourself, kwetsagalang, umuzi wa ka baba ncele nitshele ninjani. A senyegile meletlo, kopana ka dipitlo sonke and we dilo tse di fatla. Bathunyana, wena barumulana. When I alone I ask myself gore a re tla khona na. Ditlhobolo mathekeng ke sa bole dipotleng. Re khutse le tsone back in the days of tipi khotleng khotwe. Ska utswa, ska aka, just love your neighbor. Don't kill him for the sake of pain. Ke tlogole lobela taba tsa net. Se tlhomole pelo sa ko ka se yang fana gets. I was talking about the story of this other venture ya Unit 1. Had his own salon on Mona Lim the gun. Living life nice, Jaka Zwetsiribo one. Came across the gun, Bamudiji Matakankan. So a girl getting mugged, try to help, but instead, for being a good Samaritan, he got a hole in the head. Rest in peace to my mope. Donate Kahisa, no Pama Fokate. And also those who died of Pamokate. When I don't look up and ask myself, Khuti la khanang, Tule fatshe la boraro na bathong le naganang. A senyegile meletlo re kopana ka dipitlo ke malwetse ra bolana dilo tse di fatla ditlo. When I don't look up and ask yourself, kwetsagalang, umuzi wa ka baba ncele nitshele ninjani. A senyegile meletlo re kopana ka dipitlo sonke siyafa and we dilo tse di fatla ditlo. Ha go senyega re supa parlamente. Every Saturday ka sitletse ka tente. Balemi ba jabetswa ha ba thole sete. Mabini ba jabetswa ha ba thole sete. Majita ba rata go abuse di chicks. Gangsters roam ha ba dire next. Ha re tlotle bana le basadi. Ha re tlotle o le rato le batsadi. What I say just sunk in. If you didn't, that's too bad, cause it's in already. It's gonna stay in your mind and haunt you the rest of your life. For the good. Let's work on this. Make this a better place. All of us.
It is the late Double HP Hip Hop Pansula. That was the moniker by which he presented himself as a skilled rapper. And of course, he passed away in October of 2018. And at the time, there was lots of speculation around what was the potential cause of his passing, with all kinds of speculations being thrown around potentially a death by suicide. We know that he was struggling, and he'd been struggling for a few years prior to his passing. And in fact, in a 2016 interview, he had revealed that he was battling depression. And in the pressures of life, the pressures that come with being an entertainer, with being at the top of your game, and of course with also just watching the tides turn, as they often do in this entertainment industry. It can be a lot for folks out there. Anyway, that is how we open up the show today. He is greatly missed. His contribution to the world of hip-hop. We had a conversation just last week with one of the co-founders of Mufftown Heights. And of course, you know that Double HP was one of those artists who rose through that particular machinery, performing in that space for a number of years. And just the impact that he had in hip-hop in this country, and doing things so incredibly different too at that time. Not only rapping in his native tongue, but also was very big on sampling and bringing old school samples into a lot of his music and just making it so groovy. It would have been lovely to see, had he lived until today, to see a collaboration, perhaps a collaborative album between himself and also the late AKA, because I think they approached the production of their music very similarly. And it would have been nice to see what could have happened by way of collaborative work. But that is Double HP. Gudira Khalang is the name of the song, What Is Happening. It's just gone 10 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. We're catching up with Linda Trim, and we're looking at how modern work fuels loneliness. Very interesting very interesting conversation. This I'm quite interested in it, because I often think we don't think about the psychological effects of how we work as a society on us in our professional as well as our personal spaces, and as much as work environments are important, and we do live in a capitalist society, so it is part and parcel of who we are, but there's a sense of vulnerability, right? There's a sense of vulnerability that we place ourselves in when we are in these sort of high demand, high paced, highly intense work environments. And we maybe even are losing a true connection with humans. You come into a building and you might work with humans, but are you really connected with those humans on a deeper level? And so we thought we'd invite Linda Trim to walk us through this conversation. How are you doing this afternoon? Linda?
Yes, hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for coming through. And Linda Trim is the director at Giant Leap. And I think maybe before we even get into this conversation, just some context around Giant Leap, who you guys are and the work that you guys do.
Giant Leap is a workspace specialist company that focuses on planning, building and designing offices. But obviously a huge element of that is how people work within their space and how spaces are functional for people and the work, because obviously the two go hand in hand. Happy people, happy work.
And I wonder, are we happy people? I just saw a poll over the weekend on X that suggested that South Africans are the happiest people in the world. But are we a happy people in our environments of work? What have you assessed?
So I think that COVID changed many things in the work environment. And obviously we're speaking about loneliness in the workplace. And it wasn't something that stemmed only from COVID. I think as society, we've become lonelier people, very attached to our devices, less needy of seeing people in person. But obviously COVID led to taking people away from the office, where before it was natural to work at the office 8 to 5. So certainly our relationships with people have changed, and the want for people to go to the office has changed. which I think has definitely had a demise on people and society. Even though people love the flexibility of being at home, we all need company and to see people.
And, pre-COVID, when we were in the typical traditional work spaces, I wonder, though, if we had real, true connections with people, connections that we could say that were authentic and genuine, or were we still finding that perhaps even in a space with warm bodies, there's still a sense of loneliness in these environments?
So I definitely think we had better relationships. It's the same as meeting a person and dating them online and never meeting them in person. You cannot build trust and vulnerability when you never meet people. So we certainly definitely had better relationships because we communicated in different ways. Before, we would have the odd Teams meeting. It wasn't natural to be stuck behind your computer on Teams meetings. As an example, I'm at the office today, but I've been on Teams calls since 9 o'clock. So I haven't had the opportunity to even walk around and mix with the people in the office. So I think we need to bring people together, because when you meet someone face to face, it's a very different experience than when you meet them online. In fact, often the first time you meet them in person after an online meeting, you get a fright because they're actually completely different to what you thought. So it's hard to read a person's energy and body language online. So certainly when we're together at the office, we want to encourage people to mingle, which also goes against the grain of work. But when you step away from your desk and you grab a cup of coffee, there's likely to be someone you would never speak to at the coffee machine. And what you can learn from them or grow from them, or potential friendship may develop, it's a lot that can come from it.
Absolutely. Now, how do leaders or, those in positions within the professional setting, how do they go about cultivating this culture of trust? And you talk about not being physically there impacts our trust, right? And psychological safety. How do you then cultivate that culture of trust and psychological safety in the workplace, just to foster those stronger social connections, I guess, and to almost mitigate against that workplace loneliness?
I think it's really important as a leader to have a flat structure. And one of the difficulties of not being at the office, if you're a young person or a new person in an organization, you're petrified to phone your leader on their cell phone if they're working from home or if you're at home, where if they're able to walk around the office and see that it's a safe environment and actually you're not a bad person and have a chat with you. I mean, they say a 5-minute informal chat can win a person over for the next 3 to 4 months. So it's important to have that than living in fear and phoning someone and they're not available and you've missed them and then you panic. So we have to build that safety and trust with people. And they learn from you while they're doing it. Every conversation they eavesdrop, they learn or they mentored.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely come back. I just want to take a quick pause, Linda, and then we'll come back on the other side and we'll get even deeper into these conversations. We're looking at loneliness in the workplace and maybe even some ways that Linda can suggest that we consider in as far as maybe putting in strategies to get us through this hump and to bring back that human-to-human connection again. It's just gone 20 past 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga.
Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it.
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference is going to be taking place from the 10th until the 12th of July in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. And you can tune into the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and the National Pulse with Ashraf Gada to get insights straight from the conference.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
So we're in conversation with Linda Trim, who's the director at Giant Leap, and we're talking around how modern work could potentially fuel loneliness. And the Social Connection in Australia 2023 report acknowledged that loneliness hurts businesses because it causes employee absenteeism and reduced productivity. So Linda, as we talk around mitigating this, how should companies respond? How should they be responsive and conscious of, firstly, I guess, loneliness, and perhaps then I'll double that down by saying, what are the factors that contribute to it? We've spoken about just our new ways of working now, remote working. But I'm sure there's also other dynamics that come into play in the work environment that contribute to workplace loneliness.
There are many ways we can look at it. By encouraging people to come to the office 3 or 4 days a week certainly helps. But people want to come to an office where they feel comfortable and welcome, where they're not intimidated. So you can build that vulnerability and trust with them. And a lot of that goes into the design and planning of an office and giving people spaces that isn't just a desk where they can have coffee, where they can socialize, they can eat lunch, they can go outside. If they want to make a private phone call, they can do so. All of that leads to comfort. One of the big discussion points at the moment is that so many of people say they want their own desk because that allows them to build trust with the company. They can put a picture of their dog or their baby, or that they can make it their own, and they're comfortable to be at work. So all of that helps people to want to come to the office, socialize, mix with people, feel comfortable with their leadership team. But then at the same time, we need to encourage fewer online meetings, fewer in-person meetings. When we have an online meeting, you typically log on and jump straight into the meeting. You're very limited by the time you've got. You never engage about how the weekend was, or maybe you grabbed your favorite cup of coffee at your best restaurant and your next friend's going to go try it the next week, or maybe you're loving your new yoga class and the person next to you wants to join next week. And all of that builds trust and the ability to make friends with people. So we really need to encourage that. And at the same time, your leader might come past and jump in on the joke, and that makes you feel comfortable to ask them a question. So it's about creating spaces which leads to connection between colleagues, not just a place to hide behind your computer, where there's chit chat and a flow of existing conversations, and also a place to pick up, because once you've made small chat with someone, the next day you're going to go ask them how their yoga class was.
Yes.
And from there, your relationship deepens and develops, even though it may not be about work for that point in time.
Absolutely. And you know, as you sort of run through the various scenarios, in my head, I'm thinking, I eavesdropped on one of my friends in the height of COVID, who's in a structured banking executive environment, on a Teams call, and the director of the division started the meeting in their attempt to normalize what was an abnormal situation at the time, started the meeting by asking everybody, okay, we're going to go around and everyone can just take 5 minutes to let me know, to your point, just let me know, how was your weekend? You know, what did you do that was of interest, or how did you spend your weekend? Which I found refreshing, because it then created what you talk about here, that connection. Even though we are remotely away from each other and we're looking at each other through these Teams screens, there's still the sense of, okay, let's try and find some normal human connection in this situation.
And that's really important, because even as a leader, how do you mentor and watch over people when you actually have no idea about their world or what they're going through if you never see them? Where if someone walks in the door and they've had a bad morning, it would typically show in their face and you could read it as a person. But when they're at home, you've got actually absolutely no idea. And for companies, that's also really important, because one of your biggest expenses are your employees. It's expensive to find new people. It's expensive to train them up. So it's a lot more important to keep the people you've got. And in order to do that, you need to have vulnerability and trust and watch over people when they're having good and bad times and be supportive of that.
Interesting. You also, the point of being aware that particular work roles and work environments and responsibilities come with that sense of isolation and that sense of loneliness. And that expression that it's lonely at the top often suggests that senior leaders and executives, for instance, are so removed from that connection that it creates that sense of isolation and loneliness.
The huge factor, because it doesn't matter who you are in life. We all get stuck. We all get stuck on a solution. We all have a bad day. And there's something refreshing to be able to get up from your desk. I'll give you an example. We put in a new coffee bar in our office, but it's right next to reception, and you have to walk past everyone if you want to get your cup of coffee. But it honestly is the best cup of coffee in Joburg. And the way that it's brought our teams together, doesn't matter who you are in the company, everybody comes together and chats, and it makes everyone feel as one. So even if you're at the top and you're having a really bad day, you can go sit with whoever, chill out for 5 or 10 minutes, break that stuck thought in your mind, and then carry on your day. And you're no longer lonely.
Yeah.
Someone's given you a laugh. They've told you a joke. You don't feel so bad about your bad day.
Absolutely. And I think two things I'm getting from that. It's the power of design, considered design, number one. And also the kind of leadership culture in an organization that would sit with someone like yourself and say, I actually want to create that sort of gauntlet tunnel for people to walk through so that they can connect.
It's so important that people are forced to connect. And that's why you find in an office environment, many introverts come to the office just for their friends. And when they meet those people, they actually become very extroverted because they're in a safe and comfortable place. And they might go home and never speak to another soul. But that 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, is their livelihood and social life.
Definitely, I think you've given, some of our listeners who might be in a position of making decisions around how they foster engagement in their companies something to think about. We never think about loneliness from that perspective. Linda Trim, I appreciate the time. And Linda's a director with Giant Leap.
Thank you.
With the headlines at 2:30, I am Dineo Mutaung. Good afternoon. Gauteng residents are warned to brace themselves for an extremely cold night as temperatures are expected to plummet overnight to -4 degrees in Johannesburg and -2 in Tshwane. In other news, Free State Health MEC Munyatso Mahlatsi says the National District Hospital in Bloemfontein will remain closed for the duration of the investigation into the fire that burned down the first and second floor yesterday afternoon. And the West African bloc ECOWAS has warned that it risks disintegration and worsened insecurity after Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger formalized their breakaway union. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
I'm actually just reflecting on this conversation we just had with Linda Trim, around loneliness in the workplace. And I'm just comparing the different organizations that I've worked at, the different media houses that I've spent substantial amount of time at, over my 20 years of broadcasting. And it is, as she says, so many of the things that she talked about, and it spoke to company culture and leadership style, because essentially top down, you then create how people will engage, and you start thinking about a variety of things, even the dynamics of how people move in your spaces, physically move in your spaces, to encourage and foster that social interaction has been so greatly different from place to place. There are places where I just swipe in, swipe out, do my job and leave. And there are places where you come in 2 hours before and you literally go through every department, even though you have nothing to do with them that day, and you know everybody by name, because that, to get to the coffee machine and to get to your favorite espresso, what, you have to go through these 10 offices. It's quite interesting. And those are the places where I've been the happiest, actually, where I've had a lot of social engagement, where people will say, we can hear you coming from the second floor. You are so loud. Those are the places I've been the happiest. Anyway, we are now focusing on this call. The Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program Foundation is inviting learners to apply for tertiary funding. And we've got the Corporate Partnerships and Operations Manager for the program, Sfanele Biela, joining me. How are you, Sfanele?
And yourself?
I'm great, thank you. Alrighty, let's get to know you guys a little bit. The Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program Foundation, NPC, very long name. Tell us a little bit about the organization.
So the Ikusasa Student Financial Aid Program Foundation, NPC, called ISFAB for short, is a non-profit that was established initially in response to the Feed Must Fall movement of 2017, initially developed as a pilot that looks to address the funding needs of students from missing middle income families, where we identified that there was a gap where family members do not make small enough amounts of money to qualify for NSFAS. However, they considered to afford tertiary education when they in reality do not afford it directly. So they were called the missing middle, and we were launched as a pilot initially to address those funding needs, offering bursaries to those students from the missing middle in occupations of high demand, which were specifically STEM careers in South Africa. So while addressing that need, just trying to make sure that we offer well-rounded support called wraparound support, where we support them financially, but also look at their psychosocial needs as well, to sort of shorten the amount of time it takes for them to complete their qualifications. Because if we say your focus is to study only and everything else is going to be covered, we also try and assist you with soft skills. We assist you with therapy, with counseling, to just ensure that we end up with well-rounded professionals that thrive in their professional careers of choice, and we're able to economically then contribute to the development of the country. So that's where ISFAB is from.
And very important, that wraparound support sort of approach of doing things, given everything we know about South African society. And I always say this, how schools, or rather how tertiaries and campuses are really a microcosm of what we have to deal with. And if we want students to be successful and harness opportunities like this, then it's not enough to just give them financial support. You need to look at them as holistic individuals. So we like that element. Now, the foundation supports students that focus on fields that are identified as critical to South Africa's economic development. So what are those?
So currently we have health sciences, we have engineering, all faculties, accounting, we have data science, computer science, and recently added have been green skills, which are is a new addition or an unfamiliar addition where we are looking towards renewable energy career options with our situation with electricity in the country. So it is revised annually, where we then consider where the biggest need lies. However, for the past couple of years, it's just been a lot of science, health, engineering, accounting, career fields. Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that makes perfect sense. By way of the funding, who is eligible? We've touched on obviously missing middle, but are there any other kind of criteria that would exclude or preclude somebody?
So the most important one, I think, to mention is that currently ISFAP funds South African citizen students. So at the moment, that is the only exclusion that we have. And we look at household income from 0 to 600,000 per annum. This is considered on a gross level, so not net, but gross. And then the other nitty-gritties of the students who qualify are then driven by funder requirements. Okay. So for application purposes, the students need to be South African citizens from families that earn between 0 and 600,000 per annum in their household.
Okay. I also kind of like the fact that the cap is 600,000 because, as you said, it then pulls in a cohort that is considered a little bit too cushy and comfortable. And the perception is that they are able to then pay for exorbitant tertiary fees, which we know is not the reality in South Africa.
Exactly.
All right. Talk to me about, so you opened, is there still time? I know you opened a month ago for 2025, for the 2025 academic year, but is there still time for students to get in their applications?
So we opened on the 3rd of June, and we will remain open until the last day of October.
Oh, okay.
So there is still time for students to put in their applications. We ran a purely online application system for both undergraduate and postgraduate students. So for those students who started their applications and have not submitted their applications, there's still time. And for students who still wish to start their applications, there's still time.
Okay. Where do we go? I mean, I chuckled earlier, obviously, by saying the IGUSASA Student Financial Aid Program Foundation, NPC. We are obviously not typing that onto a Google search.
No, unfortunately not. So our apply online website is isfapapplyonline.co.za.
Sorry, give it to me again.
isfapapplyonline.co.za.
Okay, so ISFAP apply online, all one word.
Yes.
.co.za, and ISFAP is ISFAP.
Yes.
Awesome. So ISFAP apply online.co.za.
Yes, and then they'd be directed, once they land on the application site, they are then able to choose according to undergrad or postgraduate. And under that, they're able to choose the institutions of their interest, and then the application will then it's a step-by-step process that will trigger them to unlock their sections as they move forward.
Oh, okay. And because I've never done these kinds of applications, I don't know, I'm just having the most random thought in my head. That when you apply, because, we always get these kinds of questions. When you apply for this kind of funding, I'm presuming you already have acceptance at an institution of your choice.
For postgraduate students, yes, we would need some form of proof that you have been accepted for the program. But for our students currently completing matric, they're able to apply with their grade 11 results. And because they create an account that's linked to their email address, we are able to then have those accounts for them. And if a student is chosen, they're informed. However, the nice thing about ISFAP is we are able to source their matric results from the Department of Higher Education and Training when matric results are released. So, yes. So they really we won't need proof of acceptance. However, that process kicks in once a student is then selected for allocation or onboarding, and from which we will then also communicate with the university that the student may have registered at to get a confirmation, which is another important thing that I need to mention is that the students that apply for ISFAP funding, most of them would need to pay their registration fee in 2025 as the allocation happens post-registration and would need a confirmation of registration from the institution.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you go onto asfapapplyonline.co.za and you start the beginning parts of your application, particularly if you're an undergrad. And then once you've then been allocated and accepted at a varsity of your choice for the following year, for first year, you then must pay on your own accord the fees for registration fees for the varsity, but you guys then take over after that with everything else.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Makes perfect sense to me. Thank you so much for the time. That was Sfanele Biela. And of course, Sfanele is the Corporate Partnerships and Operations Manager at ISFAP. That's where you go, www.isfap, apply online, all one word, .co.za. And that is for both undergrads as well as postgraduate students. And they open until the 31st of October 2024 for you to make those respective applications if you need some funding. 0 to 600,000 is the household income cap for you to qualify. And of course, being a South African and all the rest of the nitty-gritties that you'll find online. Let's take a quick pause and then Ashraf is going to come through and tell us what's coming up on the National Pulse.
Nelson Mandela once said,
It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it.
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Ashraf is in the house. How are you doing? How are you dealing with the cold?
I'm fine. I'm lying, but I'm fine. Well, yeah, listen, it can be worse in life. You could be outside. We're in the studios.
You could be outside and in the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
Who are having the worst of it.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Right? What's coming up today?
Well, lots of things. So, of course, we'll talk about that. Let's call it Cape of Storms or Highveld Chills, whichever one you want to take it. There's a conversation around nuclear energy plants. South Africa, there's this plan. We'll talk about, Gautrain and the labour strikes around that and the implications thereof. Then the pulse of the public service report, okay? We'll talk about that. The French, not the French election, it's almost like a French revolution, by the way, the way that election has turned around. And then probably the big one of the heart, which we start first, is Jeremy Corbyn, the former leader of the Labour Party. Now he got a seat as an independent in the British election, so we'll talk to him first up. Yeah, all of that. The National Pulse.
Very interesting. There's so much going on in the world. Blink and things just change. Ashraf Garda is coming through between 3 and 6 o'clock today on the National Pulse. We're going to wrap up the show now from our end.
The world's best cooking show is coming to S3. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Uphumapi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Starts Saturday 13th July at 7:30 p.m. on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Bank Conference is going to take place from the 10th until the 12th of July in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. And you can tune in to the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We are wrapping up the show now with Michael Zahariev, who is the co-founder of Luxcity, and we're looking at the South African e-commerce explosion. And apparently it's left many players feeling like they're falling behind when it comes to adapting to the rapid growth. And according to a new report from Accenture, with e-commerce in the country now exceeding 400 billion in value by 2025. How are you doing, Michael? You good?
Yes, I'm good, and thanks for having me this afternoon.
Thank you for the time. Geez, this is interesting. So you'll suggest that, many players are being left behind, but why so?
Well, I think for a traditional business, the idea of e-commerce or digitizing your business is quite a daunting thought. And really, that leaves them thinking they have to invest massively. How do they get the skills? Do they have to make like a huge business shift or change their position? But really, it can be seen much more differently if you understand e-commerce and what the goals really are. And I think that's where South Africans are really struggling a bit.
All right. So let's look at the understanding of e-commerce and those goals. What should business owners and players be clued into or tapped into?
Well, I think what's important for a business owner is to understand where their customers are and how their customers are engaging with them. And the reality is that these days, most customers want to engage with every business to a certain extent online. And what happens is businesses get stuck into this idea of thinking, I need to have an online store, or I need to have this to be a digital e-commerce company. But that doesn't always solve the customer's problem. Sometimes the customer's problem might be as simple as just wanting to engage with the business digitally, not needing to phone them, maybe that business having a WhatsApp line, maybe that business being able to send them a digital invoice or a digital payment link. So what I think the important first step for any business to do is understand what problem am I able to solve for my customer using digital, not looking at e-commerce like this online store kind of concept that many of them might be looking at it into, but looking at it, how can I digitally enable my business to better serve my customer, and then grow out those services, those digital services, more and more over time. And that's how you gradually make the shift into being an e-commerce player, or more importantly for these days, an omni-channel player.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm probably a dinosaur retail consumer specifically because I still prefer the physical nature of being able to walk into spaces, engage with humans. I know there are some stores, as you talk about, sort of slowly integrating some kind of digitization into their operations. There's a big global chain, which I'm not going to mention, in all of our malls that has done that in this last year. They've, introduced non-human till contacts, all kinds of interesting things. You scan your phone inside the store. I'm still very reluctant, even with all of that innovation. But I get your point, because then it means perhaps the slow evolution also helps a consumer like myself to start trusting the technology space of e-commerce, but also slowly allowing the business to transition without it being a shock.
Exactly. I mean, I think what you're saying speaks exactly to the point I'm making. A lot of people, they approach it saying, oh, this is what being a digital business is, or I need e-commerce, I need a web shop, and they introduce all this complexity into their business, and their clients, that's not solving any of their problems. So what you really want to be doing is, number one, solving your problem, and number two, improving your business efficiency. And there's a lot of really easy ways to do that. Like one of the biggest pharmacies, for example, in South Africa, chains, what they've done is they've just allowed you to submit your script over WhatsApp. And that's essentially an e-commerce solution. It's a digital solution, but they haven't now required you to go create a profile, access their website, do all these complex things. It's just as simple as add us on WhatsApp and submit your script. And that's a really easy example of how someone can use something that's really simple very effectively. And that's where you should really begin.
Now, I know that you guys at Luxity really have just cemented yourselves in this space, right? Once again, coming top of the pile in the Financial Times ranking in as far as growing your e-commerce company. So how would you advise someone else to leverage on advanced tech in order to remain competitive?
Well, I think I think it really speaks a lot, and I know I'm hampering this point, is understanding your customer. So something that's interesting about what we did really is we started off as an e-commerce business, and as we were growing, we realized that issue which you said about the touch and feel part, and we decided we need to go into physical retail. So we did it the opposite way around. And this is when everyone was talking about the retail apocalypse, etc. And we essentially became an omni-channel retailer, which means, both retail and digital. And why we did that was realizing the benefits of what the digital is versus the physical and how to integrate that. And when we moved into the physical retail space, a lot of the things didn't make sense to us. So we reinvented them so they would make sense from a customer point of view. And I think that's what it really is about. Not just implementing systems for the sake of it, but understanding what is feasible, what is affordable for my company, and how best can I service that customer.
Now, Michael, where does AI now factor into this conversation, right? Because we're moving so quickly in the world of innovative technology, and AI is becoming sort of the buzz around every sector. How do we then incorporate that or use that and I know you guys have used it in your strategy quite successfully.
Yes, so AI is definitely the biggest buzzword, and I think any business, or business person, no matter who you are, should at minimum be engaging with AI, using a platform like ChatGPT daily just to get used to it, to understand how it works, what works on it, what doesn't work on it. It's like the early days of Google. I don't know, I remember my parents took about 4 or 5 years to start believing in Googling something. And, now their Google skills still haven't caught up to, what the younger generations are like. And a very similar thing is happening with AI. You really need to get a feel for it now so it becomes a bit general. But from a business point of view, what's really important now is to start structuring and collecting your data on your customer, because AI is only as good as the data and inputs that you give it. So if you're a traditional business, you don't have any sight of your customers, you don't have their emails, you don't have their purchase history attached to their email, etc., you're not going to be able to leverage AI, because when you ask it something, do this for my customers or create this marketing campaign, it's not going to have any context around your business, or not as much as a bigger business. So what's been really great about what we did when we went into retail, we said, well, to shop online with us, you need an account. So when you shop in store with us, you need an account. So we've been able to aggregate our customers' data from the get-go, which now allows us to implement AI to treat each customer individually and specifically based on the entire purchase history.
You guys also, part of the data reporting that I'm reading here is that the number of e-commerce users is expected to actually grow exponentially to around 40 million by 2027. That's just around the corner. And considering that we had a population of 60 million, obviously, vast majority of people are gravitating towards e-commerce. There's opportunities there for companies. There's opportunities there for them to capitalize for marketing, positioning, and ultimately sales and growth.
Certainly. I mean, I think even for us, the explosion of e-commerce has been quite a surprise in South Africa. I mean, our business has only been around 7 years, and I remember in the beginning, people were still dealing with, can I trust putting my credit card into a website, and having a lot of anxiety about things like that. So, if you think how far the market has come now, where e-commerce is almost a daily thing, now we even have e-commerce and couriers and infrastructure starting to service more remote areas or solutions for more rural areas, etc. So it's definitely exploding, and there's a huge opportunity there, but it's also a huge risk for companies that aren't innovating, because those aren't customers that weren't shopping before. Most of those customers are shopping traditionally and are now moving some of their spend to e-commerce because it's more convenient. And that's why, again, I say you need to understand your customer, because if your customer is demanding a convenience that e-commerce is offering them and you're not adapting to that, it's an opportunity for someone to steal your customer.
Absolutely. Michael Zahariev, always a pleasure. And Michael is the co-founder of Lux City, walking us through that. So hopefully if you are in business and you're engaging with your customers, a customer-driven kind of business, doesn't necessarily have to be retail, that you've walked away from this maybe thinking about how you integrate e-commerce into your building, into your business rather, even just, slowly, surely, a biggie mark meer. Isn't that what they say out there? That is how we wrap it up on our end. We are going to vacate the space now for Ashraf Garda and his team. They're coming through with the national pulse between 3 and 6. Going to brave the cold weather out there. I don't know what's worse when it's bitterly cold. I think it's the wind factor. What do they call it? A windshield, or what do they call it when the wind just gusts at you? I think that's worse about a cold day, because all of you could be bundled up from head to toe, feeling rather warm, and your face and your hands are generally exposed. And when that wind comes and hits you at sub-zero temperatures, you're just like, whew. Why does it? Okay, I know it's not sub-zero, but you're like, why is it so cold? It kind of feels like it's sub-zero though for us South Africans, because once it gets this cold, single-digit cold, we're just like, We will see you tomorrow, Tuesday. I make that disclaimer. My cameraman in studio laughs because someone's about to say it's not sub-zero. Yes, we know it's not sub-zero. It's just sub-zero in our heads. Single-digit cold. We're building up to later on in the week. Thursday, we're going to be in Cape Town, both myself and Ashraf. But for the first part of the week, we are here. And hopefully by the time we get to Cape Town, the weather will be playing ball a little bit. I know that Cape Town's also gotten the worst of this cold. And with schools opening, there's, still that anticipation around whether or not schools are going to open on time for the term, or kids should be held back. From what I know, though, the Department of Education in the Western Cape has said that no, it's all right. We can go ahead and open schools, but those kinds of decisions can also change at a drop of a hat, depending on what the weather does, considering all those winds as well that sometimes are at play in Cape Town. But we'll see you tomorrow. We thank you for choosing to be in conversation with us. As always, we appreciate it. And inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month.
Africa.